Hello and welcome to week 2 of Mirepoix by Dominic Auger. First of all, thank you for everyone who ordered for our soft opening. It's great to hear some good feedback after quite a lot of hard work. Moving on to this week, so thank you for ordering this week, especially to our return customers. Absolutely great to see. So this week what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly explain what's in the box and the equipment you need. It's probably going to take about 5 to 10 minutes. So if you want to skip straight to the cooking part and how we're going to heat it up, feel free. I'll put a time at the bottom when it gets there. So you can skip straight ahead. So first of all, what's in the box? So I'll go through the starter. So this is sort of my take on a Mirepoix. So it's a savoury Mirepoix with the flavours of the south of France market. So obviously when you go around the markets south of France, a few things you're always going to see: goat's cheese, tomatoes and olives. It's a big flavour combination of the south. So what I've done is sort of put them together in a sort of a Mirepoix representation. So for the starter, you should have 4 piping bags, 1 sheet of parchment paper with your puff pastry in, a little wrap of your dehydrated olives, your olive crumb, and then one bag of green oil. So first of all, for the puff pastry, you can see, just be careful with these, they are very delicate. So in here, you've got some lovely puff pastry with onion seeds pressed into it. So the onion seeds you typically find in sort of Indian cooking. They're going to give you a nice sort of, they're going to pop in your mouth. They're a bit like popping candy just with flavour instead of an actual crackle. So the olive crumb. So this is olives that I've dehydrated. The same ones that I use in the Tapenade dehydrated. So they give you a really salty, olivey hit on the top and a little bit of texture. So in the bag, this is a green herb oil. Should get notes of mint and chives coming through. So what that's going to do is going to freshen up the dish a little bit. It's weird to think that oil can freshen dishes, but 100% it can. Now onto the 4 piping bags. So we'll start with the one. This is a goat's cheese mix. So what I've done is I've got a lovely log of goat's cheese in, and then I've mixed it through with a little bit of labneh. Labneh is like a thick yogurt, a hung yogurt. That's going to dull down the goat's cheese a little bit. Obviously, if you like goat's cheese, you find that it is a strong flavour. So to make sure it's not overpowering everything else on the dish, we put a bit of labneh in there. Onto the red one. So this is a sun-dried tomato and roasted red pepper. Again, a very strong flavour. So we're only going to use a little bit of this on the Mirepoix. The black one, or the purple one, this is a tapenade. So sort of made a classic tapenade using Greek olives, olive oil, anchovies and capers. There's also a little bit of garlic and salt going through there. And then lastly, the other sort of red one, this is the tomato shrub. So shrub is a sort of a fermenting process. So this is a 90-day ferment of tomatoes in soy sauce vinegar. So what that's going to do is obviously going to add sweetness, saltiness, but really rich umami flavour that's going to come through in the dish. It's going to complement the goat's cheese very well. So that's everything you're going to need for the starter. I'll just move this to one side. Now for the main course. So you should have one sort of sausage looking thing, 1 piping bag, and then 3 things in foil, parchment, and then a little sprig of lemon thyme. So first of all, the protein, the chicken. So this is a chicken ballotine. So in the middle you've got a chicken breast on one side, and on the other side you've got a chicken mousse, a chicken mushroom mousse. So in there you've got different types of mushrooms. You've got Paris cups, oyster mushroom, shiitake, chestnut, and some sep as well. So that's on one side, and the whole thing's wrapped in chicken skin, a bit like you would for Wellington. You wrap it in pastry, just wrap chicken skin in one. It's going to keep it all moist inside, it's going to keep it all together, and it's going to crisp up lovely. So this ballotine has been cooked in the water bath, so all we're going to do later is reheat it and then fry it off to get that like nice blistering that you find on chicken skin. In here, this is a chicken jus, or I wouldn't call it a jus, it's more of a chicken reduction. Don't worry if it's solidified, it will do. It will turn into like a jelly. So this is going to be super concentrated. I've also got a lot of vinegar going through it, hence why I call it the chicken gastric. So this is going to really cut through some of the elements on the dish, and there's only going to be a little bit of this going on the plate. So onto the sort of the larger of the paper. This is the potato terrine, or confit potatoes. So Mirepoix, cooked in duck fat and then compressed overnight. Going to be very rich, going to give that a lovely confit flavour coming through. Onto the bigger of the 2 wraps. So in here we've got our braised leeks, sort of braised in a master stock, and our pickled mushrooms. So the pickled mushrooms are going to sort of counteract the richness again of certain elements of the dish. Lastly, or penultimately, sorry, is the corn powder. So this is going to add sweetness to the dish to balance out some of the vinegary notes, and also it's going to add a little bit of texture, and it's going to look nice on the plate. And then lastly, sprig of lemon thyme. So this is just the flowering lemon thyme, and we're just going to use that for presentation at the end. Cool. So on to the final course. We'll have our dessert. So just be careful with this box. I'll open this in a minute when I get onto it, and I'll show you exactly how to take it out. So in there is the lemon tart. So yeah, I'll explain it when I take it out. Alright, so now that I've explained what's on each course, I'll quickly rattle off the little bits of equipment you're going to need. You're not going to need a lot this week compared to last week, so don't worry if you don't have a massive kitchen. So you're going to need one saucepan. Doesn't have to be massive, just need to be big enough to fit the ballantine or ballantines in if you're doing multiple ones. So that's just going to be used to heat it up. You're also going to need a frying pan. So again, this is a perfect size for two and three. If you're a party of 4 or 5, you might want to go one bigger, but it should be okay. You're also going to need a chef knife, a sort of a flicker or a burger flipper or whatever you want to call it. That's going to be used for the mille-feuille to help get it onto the plate at the end. A little container. If you don't have a container, you can use a mug or a small bowl or a glass, whatever you want. That's just going to be for the oil. A tea sieve and a spoon underneath to catch it. So we used this last week, the same sort of process. If you don't have a tea sieve, sub it out for a normal sieve and a side plate underneath. So that spoon's just to catch anything that falls through. Also going to need one more spoon for the herb oil and general other things. And then finally, you're going to need some good quality oil. Like I said last week, I tend to use a rapeseed oil because it's got a higher smoke point, and that will stop the oil burning before the potatoes are cooked. Reheated and crisped. And then good quality sea salt. Alright, so now that I've explained all that, we'll just quickly rattle through how we're going to do it. So a bit like last week again, we're going to get the chicken and the potato warm before we start dressing the mille-feuille. This will give us time, so after the starter, exactly like we did last week. So you'll find when you go to a restaurant, you get your starter and then you get your main 10 to 15 minutes later. It's not a case of you walk into a restaurant, they start your starter, and then you finish your starter, and then you wait 30 minutes, 40 minutes for them to bring out your main. So it's all just thinking smart, getting things ready, letting them tick over, and make sure they're staying warm. And then when you finish one course, you have a maximum 15-minute wait before you move on to your next course. So yeah, we're going to get the chicken and the potato hot, and then rest him. And then we'll dress the mille-feuille, and then we'll move on to the finishing off the main course, so frying off those leeks and plating. And then finally, like I said before, I tend to try and make the least work possible on the dessert. So when you get to the end of the meal, you might have had a bottle of wine or so. You're not struggling to get it all out onto the plate. All right, perfect. So like I said, let's start with the chicken. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, exactly like we did last week, is we're going to turn the oven on to super low. So that's going to be our warming drawer. So like I said again last week, if you do have a warming drawer, that's perfect. Just turn that on, probably about medium to medium high heat, but for the oven, as low as it goes. So in the case of this oven, it can go down to 45. So I'm going to set it on 45, so then we can rest the potatoes and the chicken in there while we're eating our starter, and it won't go cold. So just whack that on as low as you can. But try, yeah, we're aiming for about 40, 45, 50, anywhere between that is a-okay. Right, cool. Now we can start frying off the potatoes and getting that chicken ballantine nice and warm. Right, so I've got my frying pan slowly heating up, and I've got my pot of water on. So I've just filled this pot up to just over half, like 2/3 of the way up with cold water. I'm just going to bring that up to a gentle simmer and then turn it right down. So the idea is that we're going to drop the chicken ballantine in there just to heat through. So aiming for about 65, 70 degrees. So you get the probe, aim for that. Just to sit it in there for about 10, 15 minutes to heat through. So then later all we've got to do is fry it off, and it's already warm the whole way through. I've got this pan on a medium heat, so you don't want this too hot. This is what the potatoes, we're going to sear them off in there. So it's nice and warm now. I'm going to put a decent amount of rapeseed oil in there. In the middle, I'm just going to let that oil get hot. So like I said last week, when the oil starts to move around the pan by itself, you find it goes out to the sides. That's how you know oil is hot in your pan. So we'll just wait for that, and then we can get this in there. Right, so now that the water's at the right sort of temperature, just pop your finger in. It should be warm to touch, but not boiling. I'm just going to drop this in carefully, just so it doesn't splash back. And then we can just forget about that. So that's probably going to be in there, like I said, 10-15 minutes just to heat through. This pan now is hot, the oil is ready. So I'm going to take out my confit potatoes. I'm going to keep them in the paper, and I'm going to drop the whole thing just in. So what the paper does, it's going to keep it all together. It's going to stop that duck fat oozing out so much, so it's going to keep all the potatoes nice and moist. You can take them out of the paper if you wish, but you will run the risk of it going dry and falling apart. So I'm just going to keep it in the paper, and you'll find that the colour goes straight through the paper. I'm also, what I'm going to do this time, is I'm just going to chuck my chicken gastric in here just to heat through. So all we're going to do later is chuck that into a mug or your container just to get it on the plate. So don't really have to worry about this now. This is on nice and low. Yeah, so like I said, 10-15 minutes, and then we can start. Okay, so these both been on now for about 15 minutes. I've just kept turning the potatoes so you get a nice colour on either side. And if you come close, you can just see, so this is the sort of colour you're going to look for through the paper. So every side will have that. So now that's done, you can turn this pan off. Don't throw away the fat. We're going to use that later to reheat, to flash fry the chicken and the leeks. You can pop that on there. And then I take this whole pan across with me because we're going to open up the ballantine. Yeah, so to open up the ballantine, we're just going to take it out of the water and then cut open the top of the cling film. Obviously, this water is going to be warm. It's not going to be boiling, but so just don't burn yourself. Best way to take it, get a spoon, just hold it sideways like this, really give it a nice scrape, get rid of all that. Yeah, so another word of warning when we open this, liquid is going to come out, so make sure you've got a bit of tissue to hand straight away ready. And then just squeeze the bottom gently out. And then you can see there's the liquid. Get rid of any little bits of plastic straight away, so they don't get caught in your food. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put it on the bit of parchment paper and just roll it around. We want this to be dry as much as possible, so when it hits the pan later and we start colouring it, it's not going to start spitting, go everywhere, it's not going to blister. It's going to go in, it's going to start colouring nice and evenly. Just give it a nice couple rolls, be very delicate, because it is obviously very fragile. And then we're going to pop that in the warming drawer or the oven, just to stay warm while we start on the Mille Feuille, the starter. Just a quick note, the sauce, you can just turn this, leave the sauce in the pot, don't put it back on the heat, it will stay warm. We don't need it to be piping hot, it just needs to be warm thoroughly. Okay, so now that we've got the chicken and the potatoes rested, we can start on the starter. So the first thing I'm going to do is get the board set up for plating. So this one is no heating up, it's just pure plating. So first thing, get your puff pastry sheets out of their little bit of paper. Feel free to reuse these bits of paper again. That's perfectly clean for baking as long as you're using gluten again. Get the olive sachet opened up. I'm going to pop that on the corner of my board in the keep the paper on it. Next I'm going to open up the herb oil. So I've got my container ready. I'm just going to take a little slice off the top if I had my knife. I'll get some scissors instead. So just on the side of the board, push it all down, cut the top off, and then pour it straight into there. You don't want to waste it, this is very, it's nice valuable stuff, so just push it all in. And like always, get rid of any small bits of plastic straight away. Next, the piping bags. So, like last week, push it down. You're going to want a fairly small nozzle on the end of this, so you only want to take a little bit off. A little bit of plastic, pop that in the bin. I've already opened the rest of these up, so we're ready to go. So the first thing, I'm going to get one sheet of puff pastry. So on the bottom one, I'm going to do a layer of the sun-dried tomatoes paste and the tapenade. I'm only going to do one layer of this because, like I said before, it's very strong. So in alternating fashion, starting at the top. So just again, squeezing the bag gently. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then with the tapenade, I'm just going to go in between, filling them up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So that's the bottom layer done. You can push that to one side gently. Next layer. So on this one, Tapenade and Shrub. So I'm just going to start with the Tapenade, and we're doing exactly the same throughout. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then again with the Shrub, this one's a little bit looser, so just be careful not to squeeze it too hard straight at the beginning. And finally, push that to one side. So on this last layer, I'm going to do goat's cheese and the Shrub. So push all this to one side. I'll start with the goat's cheese. Because this layer is on top, you're going to want to spend a little bit more time making sure it's pretty. These ones are going to be squashed, so don't worry too much about that, making them perfect. But this top one, if you're going to take loads of photos, give it a little bit more attention. I'm going to go in between with the Shrub.
I'm going to find with this one, I'm not going to go loads of big ones. I'm just going to sort of dot them all about, filling up the gaps. Going small to big, chucking them all up, so there's a bit of variety. So catch the eye a little bit more.
Alright, cool. So before we dress it all together, get your plate ready to one side. So the plate's there. Now, this is the bottom one, this is the middle one, this is the top one. So just gently put your slice underneath, grab it one end, and then just make sure you're lining it up neatly. You don't want to put too much pressure, just let it fall down naturally by itself. Again, the same with the last one. Just lift it up. Make sure it's all lined up and then drop it down. You can just give it a little bit of adjustment once you're happy with it. So now to finish off the top, so we're going to put our crumb on and our spring onions. So I'll quickly put the crumb on.
So you just get a pinch of it and then I'm just dotting them about nice and randomly. Just remember that these are going to be a little bit salty, so if you're not the biggest fan of salt, put a few less on. But if you are, that's absolutely great. Okay, so lastly, we're going to get the spring onions on. You see they're in little sort of rondelles, we like to call this, so a diagonal cut. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to open them up a little bit, so then you can see through them. And I'm going to pop one on each goat's cheese mix. So that's one. If they're broken at the bottom, don't worry, because you can just get them, poke them in, and no one is the wiser. Two more. Right, so that's the Mirepoix assembled. But before we put it on the plate, I'm just going to put a little bit more of the Shrub on. If you fancy putting more of the goat's cheese on, the Tapenade or the Sundried tomato, knock yourself out. Give them all a little taste and find which ones you prefer. But I'm going to go for the Shrub because it's got that vinegary, that umami taste that's going to really complement the whole dish. So with this, I'm going to do some dots. I'm not going to do a swipe, I'm going to do dots. So I'm going to do 3 dots going down in size. So one big one, one medium one, one small one in sort of a horseshoe shape or a semicircle. So just straight down. 1, 2, 3. Now this is the delicate part. I'm going to put my Mirepoix on the opposite side. So don't rush this, it will be very delicate at this point, especially if it's been sat for a while. Just gently pick it up. Make sure the plate's nice and close, so you're not having to run around with it, and then pop it down. Make sure you're happy with the alignment. And then lastly, this oil. So like I said, mint and chive is going to freshen the whole dish up and bring it together. Yeah, so I've got my spoon in there. I'm just going to get a good amount on the spoon. You see I'm just wiping it back so it doesn't drip on me. And then yeah, just go crazy. I'm just going to go round in a circle and let it fall out how it does. It's good on a natural look. A bit more. There you have it, guys. This is your first course of 3. Savoury Mirepoix, goat's cheese, tapenade, sun-dried tomato, tomato shrub, dehydrated olive crumb, and then a little bit of chive and mint oil to freshen the whole dish up at the end. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you back for the main course. Okay, so now that we've eaten the Mirepoix, we're just going to finish off plating the main course. So before we start colouring up the chicken, I'm just going to get everything ready for plating. So as soon as we're done, we're back over here and we're plating. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the corn powder out into the tea sieve. So exactly like we did last week, you find these little sachets. There's 2 sides, a flat side and there's a side with a bump in it. So the opposite side to the right in, there should be a little lip like that. Just take that out and then fold it down. And you just need to open up these 2 here. So don't pour it out of this straight away because we're going to actually use the paper as a funnel. Straight into the tea sieve, or with your spoon underneath, or your normal sieve with a plate underneath. You can just get rid of this little bit of paper. Next, I'm going to open up the chicken gastric. So again, with a spoon, because water will probably still be quite warm. Get your container ready. Just snip a hole in the top. You can use scissors or a knife and then just pour it in there. So if you don't have any containers, just use a mug, whatever you want. Mug probably better because it will stay warmer if you're going to be quite slow. And then last thing, just open the final sachet up. So this has got your leeks and your pickled mushrooms in. Just place the mushrooms on the side of the board so they're easy to plate. And then we're going to fry these off after we've fried the chicken. So now they're all set up over here, let's quickly go fry off the chicken. And then we'll be back over here to plate up. Okay, so I've got the same pan with the residual oil from the potato in there. It's just heating up now, so again, not full heat, I'd say 2/3 up. If it's full heat, you're going to find that as soon as you put the ballantine in, the skin's going to blister and it's going to tear. It's the same with if you wrapped it in pancetta or anything like that, you're going to force, the heat's going to force the meat to open up, to bow, just like a sausage, and yeah, it will rip. So I've gone for 7 out of 9, that's for my scale. The oil in there is nice and warm. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently place it in, right in the corner where the oil is. So we're just going to keep cooking it slowly and just keep turning it as we do, so you get an even amount of colour. So wait for about 30 seconds, and then you can just turn it slightly, back like that. If you find it's getting too hot, you can use tongs, a spoon, anything you've got ready to hand, and just keep pushing that oil right back into the corner. So every 30 seconds or so, just turn it slightly. This will make sure that you've got an even amount of heat, an even amount of colour on the whole ballantine. If you're worried that you're getting too much colour too quickly, take the pan off and just let it carry on cooking on the side while you turn the heat down. Every now and again, just roll it back just to check that you're getting the right amount of colour. We're going for a golden colour here, so if you come in quickly, this sort of colour here, this is perfect, that's what we're aiming for. It's a nice, crispy, golden chicken skin. Okay, so now that I've got an even amount of colour for my chicken ballantine, nice golden colour the whole way around, taking it out, and we're just going to quickly whack in the leeks. So we're going to get a nice sort of charred effect on these. So I'm just going to put them in, a little bit more oil. I accidentally took the oil out, so I'm just going to put it in. You shouldn't need it if you haven't taken the oil out already. So I've turned it up by 1, so on 8 out of 9 now. You want to get nice and hot, and then yeah, just drop them in, flash cook, nice and colour on one side, and then we're good to go. So now that it's hot, give it a little swizzle, and then just leave them to get a nice coloured on one side. Okay, so I've just flipped them over, and you can see you've got a nice black amount on one side, nice charred effect, and that's exactly what we're aiming for. So now that that's done, I'm just going to take them out, put them on the tray, then we can start plating. Okay, so the first thing we'll do I'm just going to get the ballantine off and I'm going to carve it. So with a sharp knife, carving knife, chef knife, I'm just going to take both ends off. Just a little amount, not too much. You don't want to be wasting any of the goodness. This is a good opportunity for you just to eat a little bit. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to do one diagonal cut. Take this bottom one off, and then the rest I'm just going to slice them into about 3 slices, 3 or 4 slices. So just making a nice triangle, gently cut the ballantine in half, and then again, 1. So I'm not pushing down with the knife, I'm just letting the sharpness of the knife do the cutting for me. Should end up with 3 nice slices and 2 end pieces. So now that we're happy with that, grab your sea salt, so I have that over here. I'm just going to put a tiny little bit on each ballantine. So that's just going to moisten up the middle, just to finish the last little bit of seasoning. You find with things like this, if you season it ahead of the game, so if I was to season it for me, if I was to season it before it came to you, by the time it got to you it'd be dry, so it obviously takes out the moisture. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my confit potatoes and just unwrap them. So this is the sort of thing you're looking for, a nice golden colour across the board. So, I'm going to pop that on the plate first, on one half, make sure it's nice and straight. And then I'm going to go for the big triangle on the other side here. This is not quite sitting straight, so I'm just going to take a little bit more off. Perfect. Now the idea is I'm going to crisscross the 2 ballantines. So 1, 2, 3, and then with this last one, just going to make it again into a nice triangle. 3, 4. So you've got a meat side and the potato side. Next, I'm going to get my leeks. Just going to put them all on the diagonal facing the chicken. I'm only going to use 3, so 3 per person, and then I'm going to put your pickled mushrooms on top of that, going the other way. So again, like I said before, I like to do them upside down. You find it gets a bit more height, you get that sort of upright effect. Next, the thyme flowers. So I'm just taking off a little bit, put them on top of the mushrooms so you get that contrast, you get the pinkness and the whiteness. I've got 3 little piles. Lastly for the potato, just a pinch of salt in between each one. Now for the corn powder, so again like I said, just bring it across on your spoon, and I'm going to put this on this side, on the potato side of the dish. So this is going to add sweetness to that half, and then the chicken can sit by itself. And lastly, the chicken gastric. So like I was saying, this is like a hard reduced chicken stock with white wine vinegar going through. It's really lovely Chardonnay vinegar. Get it from Balazoo. It's very expensive, but it's 100% worth it. The flavour you get is immense. So I'm just going to put a little bit over the chicken and around the side of the plate. So go for a little arc. There you have it. And that's your main course. Crispy chicken skin, chicken breast, chicken mousse with mushrooms going through it, confit potatoes, charred baby leeks, and pickled mushrooms. A little bit of corn powder, and then a chicken gastric to finish it all off. Alright guys, so for your final, third and final course, we're going to plate up the lemon tart. So like I was saying before, nobody wants to do a lot of work for dessert. By this time you might have had a bottle of wine, maybe 2 bottles of wine.
you're just going to want to get on with it. So I've left the minimal work as ever for the lemon tart. So you should have two things: a box containing the tart and then a little sprig of lemon thyme flowers. So with these boxes, just be very careful not to push down. You'll see there's a little catch, just push it like that and then fold it away. So the tart itself, you've got a sweet short crust pastry in the bottom, so it's going to be a nice sort of biscuity, flaky pastry. Underneath that, on top of that, you've got the preserved lemon curd. So this make a sort of traditional lemon curd, but instead of using fresh lemons, I'm using preserved lemons. So these are lemons that have been salted for 3 weeks and then sat in oil for about 6 months. What that's going to do is going to have a very savoury sort of hit to the curd. On top of that, you've got a set grapefruit salsa. So little chunks of grapefruit set in a sort of grapefruit and sugar syrup gel with kaffir lime and lime zest going for it. It's going to be very floral. And then on top you've just got the blowtorched Italian meringue. So for this, like I was saying, it's super simple. We're just going to put it bang on the centre of the plate, and then I'm going to put some flowers on top just to add a little bit of colour. So it should be fairly structurally sound, so don't worry about being too delicate with it. You could use your burger flipper or whatever you have if you wanted to. And then with the flowers, I'm just going to pick off, you can see they come in little sprigs, so like 3 or 4 in one. I'm just going to pick them off and then sort of just let them fall naturally. So you get more of a natural look to it. I will try and keep them all on the meringue. Just bear in mind that these are going to give, obviously they look very pretty, but they've got a very strong flavour as well. So I've used this through the curd as well, so it should complement it. But remember, less can sometimes be a bit more. And once you're happy with the sort of amount you've got on there, add a little bit of green against the white contrast. Yeah, just sit back, make sure it's in the centre, and then enjoy it. So here is your preserved lemon tart, short crust pastry, Italian meringue, and a citrus salsa. I hope you enjoyed everything this week, and of course we look forward to seeing you next time.